Sadly, the number of people who've died in the floods thus far in the past couple of weeks, right across the east coast of Australia, is now 22 people have lost their lives. Last night, $25 million was raised on television in a telethon featuring all the commercial networks. And amazingly, the two television networks that we pay for, being the ABC and SBS, weren't part of it. Why? Meantime, one of the things that has popped up is that people believe that crowdfunding of specific things in specific areas is more effective at helping people than charity works. Now, understandably, there are always great causes all the time that we talk about, but it seems that Australians are more likely to give money if they know exactly who it's for, exactly what it's for, rather than the overall cause, where, as we have seen in the past with some charities, they spend some now and save the rest for later. Remember that conversation we had after the bushfires about not all the money being spent at once? Well, of course, we forget that because we just do the same thing over and over again and expect a different result. Now, speaking of, there is a big problem with the way that the bureaucracy of the emergency services in New South Wales works. Now, I'm not talking about the men and women on the front line. Those people are the angels amongst us. But I'm talking about, because I've seen it with my own eyes, from 1994, the bushfires that over-empowered the Rural Fire Service and its then Commissioner Phil Koperberg, all the way through to the boss of the SES or the Rural Fire Service today, where they have more money than they've ever had before, but they also are still essentially a voluntary organisation at the ground level who are expected to behave like professionals, yet the brass, well, it is never more detached from the front line than ever before. And also, these bureaucracies have become so big, so lumbering, that to ask for help is somehow an admission of failure. When that is now baked into the way that emergency services work in New South Wales, emergency services don't work in New South Wales. Now, interestingly, after a very political week, where people intentionally decided that whatever happened, this was going to be about the Prime Minister, it has taken a week for us to learn the reality that not once but twice the SES was offered help from the ADF. But the SES, the State Emergency Service, said no. Now, they claimed that they said no because of exactly why the Queensland government didn't ask for it, which was that the Bureau of Meteorology didn't give them the correct information about how bad the rain was going to be. So if anyone anywhere wants to blame anyone, and I don't think you should, they can only operate off the information they're being given about the experts in the weather. And if the experts in the weather get it wrong, then all of the other decisions will be wrong. But the SES confirmed today that this was the case, that because they didn't think it was going to be as bad, they didn't call anyone in. And they didn't call anyone in because it would be an admission of administrative failure by the bureaucrat who ends up running the SES or the Rural Fire Service. This is the truth. The very fact that I will be further blacklisted by these organisations, and you'll never see them popping up on this show because they'll always be too difficult to talk to us, is the exact proof. Emergency Services Minister in this government or the potential government that might be coming in March of next year need to promise to change the way this service works in New South Wales. It's too bureaucratic, it's too up its own backside, and it needs to take all help when it's offered every time. Because I would prefer an abundance of help than an abundance of arse covering every single time. Meantime, the Labor leader, the potential Premier in New South Wales, well, he was hooking in today.
The disaster response itself looks like a disaster in New South Wales at the moment. We've got a situation where New South Wales residents weren't asking but begging for help from their own New South Wales government. No one should have to beg for help from their own government. It should be supplied as part of the emergency response. Now, we're not expecting miracles when disasters like this happen, but we do expect some basic coordination to take place between the New South Wales SES, the Australian Defence Force, and those that are willing and able to help.
Absolutely correct. Apparently the current Premier says he's going to have yet another review, blah, blah, blah. You need clear eyes to see that the system is broken, that the system is up its own backside and the system needs a serious change. Not one that costs $1 more. You just simply make sure that when help is offered, you take it every single time. You don't wait to show off how better you are than every other option that's on the table. This actually isn't about politicians. It's about people at the other level that are making decisions and they're not making right ones right now. And sure, the politicians are the easy pinatas to play, but the public servants that are there regardless of government, something we should be talking about.